You're now listening to Sanity at the Movies, Disney Princess Edition. Oh boy, oh boy. Today we get to talk about a movie that, as I was leaving the house today, my wife said, "Be nice to Pocahontas, you suck." Those were the last words she said as I left the house, because she likes this movie for some reason.
Your wife has inexplicable taste.
Well, yes. But I also wonder, because my wife grew up, she was a younger kid in the 90s than, like, we were teenagers around the time that Pocahontas came out. She was not.
Were we actually teenagers when Pocahontas came out? I don't think.
As I thought that, I thought, that's false. Well, there you go. We were 10, 11, something like that. Teenagers. Almost teenagers. That was the thing that I told myself in the microsecond that it took us to all these thoughts to flash through my brain. I said, we were teenagers, technically. Isn't 11?
Nope.
What are those numbers called? Double digits.
We were double digits.
We were double digits. But you don't get to be a teenager till you're 13, I guess?
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, till you're actually a teen.
Yeah. Well, okay, that makes sense. Fine. We were tweens when Pocahontas came out. She would have been, not a tween. And so, I don't know. Does the generation that's one level under us actually remember this movie with nostalgia? That's my question. Do people care about this thing? Does somebody remember this fondly? Did somebody think of this as one of the Disney classics that they grew up with?
I don't think so. I mean, I was the oldest in my family, and I have brothers spaced out all the way down to 12 years difference from me, and none of them liked Pocahontas. There are plenty of other Disney movies. I think they would all remember Hercules and Hunchback more fondly than Pocahontas.
Yeah, well, who can blame them? Pocahontas is kind of a dud.
It is one of the biggest Disney duds of the modern era.
Well, and first of all, this is Sanity at the Movies. I'm Nathan. That's Jake. He's a pastor. We're talking about Pocahontas, in case you hadn't figured that out yet. Now we've done our introductions. By the way, I don't think it really matters what your politics are either.
No.
This is not us liberal bashing.
Nope.
This is us bashing preachy, didactic movies with low entertainment value.
Exactly. It's there are plenty of movies that are more subversive in their politics that are just better movies that, they're more beautifully animated. They have better songs. They have funnier moments. They have a better story. They have more relatable characters. What does Pocahontas bring to the table besides some formulaic crap that they don't deliver on in any single place?
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
It's not good. As far as a sense of scene and place, they made Virginia about the most boring place you could possibly be.
I will say maybe the one positive thing also, maybe there's a couple things, but the scenery's pretty, the colors, those purples and greens.
When you hit the Colors of the Wind scenic montage, things are pretty for the only time in the movie.
Wow, that's harsh. I mean, I don't like this movie, but I thought it was nice to look at. When Pocahontas is on the river, just around the river bend, all that kind of stuff. You didn't think that was pretty? Purples and greens, and it's just I like the color palette. I guess it's
just a darker color palette than most Disney films.
Yeah,
it's very austere feeling to me.
Yeah,
in every way. And Pocahontas is an austere heroine.
Yeah, and all the supporting characters are duds.
Yeah, who has any fondness for Miko and Flit? I couldn't even have told you coming into the movie what anybody's names were besides Pocahontas and John Smith.
Yeah, I forgot about Miko and Flit and the dog. They weren't interesting.
I forgot that they even existed.
They weren't interesting. The villain's a dud. I mean, he's just a dandy without any kind of real sadistic glee or interest or...
Played by Cogsworth.
Played by Cogsworth. I don't know. Is there anything else? I liked hearing young Christian Bale. That was kind of fun. And
Mel Gibson was distracting.
Although it was just nice to remember Mel Gibson. I was oh, I like that Mel Gibson. He was a good star. He was a charismatic good star.
He sure loves being in those movies where he gets to kill those Indians.
Yeah, he does. Mel Gibson was distracting. Ah, boy. I mean, I think the music, I'm just trying to go through the positives here.
Colors of the Wind is catchy.
I like the bad guy song, actually. The Mine, Mine, Mine song was kind of cute, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was a fine idea, but it doesn't really deliver. Not on your expectations from a not Aladdin.
Well, at this point,
Little
you'd have,
Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast,
or you'd have Be Prepared. You'd have Gaston. You'd have, I guess Jafar didn't have one, but yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, it just falls short.
Yeah, it was pretty boring. I mean, I wanted to go into it with an open mind. I
did go into it with an open mind. I was prepared to say, hey, Disney was really smart back in the 90s. Maybe I just didn't like it because I was a boy and I was getting older.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
Nope. Sorry. It's a bad movie.
It is pretty bad. It's just a downer.
Yeah.
Nobody's likable. Everybody's kind of, like you said, austere. The ending.
The most likable character is like Powhatan and the Christian Bale character. Like,
yeah,
those are the two most likable.
Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, Thomas.
He was a good character. I would have rather followed Thomas's adventures and see him become a man or something and make some animal friends.
And then you throw in on top of it that it is the laziest movie in its preachiness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, just listen to the pantheistic spirits because everybody hates each other because they're different. Let's have a song about how we hate each other because we hate people that are different from us. It's just like, come on, guys. There's a way to tell this story that is not just this stupid and lame.
Well,
and boring.
I think you kind of have to make your choice. You're either gonna, and Hunchback had this problem too, although I think Hunchback made more interesting choices. You have to choose when you're doing these kinds of things. Are you gonna just Disneyfy it, or are you gonna stick to history? And I think if you're gonna Disneyfy it,
Disneyfy the crap out of it.
Give us a big slapstick fight at the end. Don't give us this downer of an ending where John Smith. I mean, the real Pocahontas actually went to England.
Right.
Like, she went with John Rolfe, not John Smith.
Right.
But if you're going to Disneyfy it, send her off with John Smith. What the heck? Combine them into one John character and let her go with him.
Just call him John the whole time.
Yeah.
And let it be ambiguous.
Yeah.
Like,
John Rolfe Smith.
Yeah. I mean, that maybe gets to the heart of part of the problem with even choosing Pocahontas to begin with. Is like, if you've selected source material that is so fraught with difficulty, disputed, agonized over,
you can't win.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, that's just really why Disney, stick to the legends, stick to the fantasy, stick to the fairy tales. And okay, there aren't good Native American fairy tales, and you really want a Native American princess. Make one up.
Yeah. Or here's an idea: do some good cultural appropriation. Steal a German fairy tale or something and stick it over there.
Yeah,
you could do something. And plus, I don't buy that there aren't good Native American fairy tales that you could probably dig up and Disneyfy.
There's got to be something.
Have Pocahontas face off against the Wendigo or something like that.
I mean, Frozen 2 basically did Pocahontas without a love story in a much more fun and sophisticated way. They had its own separate point. It had it had characters that you liked and were engaged with. Good comedy. Like, it's not by any stretch a great movie, Frozen 2, but it is so much better than this.
Well, yeah.
Pocahontas does not deserve to be a Disney classic.
And Pocahontas herself does not deserve to be a Disney princess. What a boring character.
Yeah.
What a boring design for a character. She looks like a Maxim model. I mean, with those lips and everything.
Everything about her, yeah.
I'm sorry. Here's the thing. I always feel a little bit like a dirty old man having these conversations about the Disney princesses, but then I think, animators and producers and people agonized about what to make this character look like.
Absolutely.
For hours and hours
in
and
animation
days.
Specifically, especially, every line is a choice.
Right. And so the fact that she's dressed like a cheesecake princess, Halloween costume princess kind of character, like with those Angelina Jolie lips and everything, like every one of those things was a choice by a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to say about it besides that it's just lame.
Yeah. Well, they were trying to accentuate Native American features and not be accused of whiteifying Pocahontas.
Right.
But
they're way more sophisticated about that sort of thing now with Moana, with things like that. Like they can actually do it.
Yeah.
But
this is a fail.
Yeah. Pocahontas just looks like a supermodel, basically.
And an austere, unapproachable one.
Yeah, she looks like the one of those French supermodels that you see that like walk down the runway and the, like unapproachable
with the cheekbones,
and the
jawline,
and the jawline and the lips that no actual woman has,
and from a surgery.
And it takes away from the story, I think, actually, that she looks like that, because it's like John Smith, even within the confines of this dumb story that they wrote, he's not learning anything about Native culture. He's just like, wow, a Maxim model. Cool. With legs. Great. I love this culture. I mean, I keep thinking about Dances with Wolves, which is, maybe not a great movie, but it hits all these same kinds of beats in a powerful way that a lot of people really love and that I really like. I haven't seen it for 20 years, but there's a way to tell this kind of story and make it powerful. It's actually a really fun story, I think, when you have an outsider that has to learn a different culture and learn the language, and like the whole middle act that takes about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and they magic over with "Listen with Your Heart." Yeah. That's actually what would have been fun and relatable. That's where all the
interest is, right?
Yeah.
Or would have been, or could have been. But you just have, like, Pocahontas has to be the noble savage who instantly sees everything. So we have to jump through all the tension in a song, right? Like, suddenly she just knows and understands everything about what's wrong with these white Europeans that have showed up. You can own the earth and still all you'll own is earth until, how high will the sycamore grow? If you cut it down, you'll never know. Like, all these things, these insights that she has into what's wrong with you and what's wrong with Western civilization, she develops them in a fraction of a second and is going to preach them, exposit them to John.
Yeah. She's just not. I mean, I suppose we're just going to keep hitting these same points.
If you're going to have these kinds of lessons, you got to make it at least feel earned, right? If John's going to learn a lesson, it needs to be earned. It can't just be, oh, the babe sang a song to me, and now I understand everything. I want to become an Indian now.
And I'm glad that mother bear didn't maul us when we stole its cub.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like, you start to think about what's actually going on in here.
This is not how nature works.
It's not.
For a song about the beauties and wonders of Mother Nature wouldn't stand for half these things that they're doing.
Nope.
Oh, boy. Well, I don't really have much context to offer on this movie besides that this was kind of the first movie that they really put into development post Beauty and the Beast. And I think I read somewhere that Katzenberg said, we didn't get the Oscar with Beauty and the Beast. We want the Oscar with this one. And that's what this movie feels like to me. That feels like that kind of encapsulates everything that's wrong with it. We're not trying to make
a great movie.
We have a story that's burning in us that we really want to tell.
No, we know that it's just like a Newbery Prize or whatever.
Exactly.
Right? When you tell kids literature, the way to get awards for, or kids stories, whether it's in literature or film, the way to get awards from adults for adults is for it to be the most obvious propagandizing crap.
And stuff that these people, I don't think even interested the people that made it. I think that, it's easy to conjecture about other people's motives, but this movie feels like the kind of movie that's made not because someone's dying to tell the story, but because they think they will be rewarded for telling this story.
They're pandering.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's a purely pragmatic decision, and that means that pragmatism is going to drive your story choices.
And it really feels that way because it's like, let's reduce the Disney formula, rebellious heroine meets dude, da-da-da-da-da. Let's distill that, and then let's graft it on
to
some
some comic side characters.
But there's no inspiration. These comic side characters aren't funny. They're not interesting.
And their scenarios aren't funny, and they're not sympathetic. You don't care about them. Like, their relationship to Pocahontas is ambiguous at best. Flit's a little protective for some reason, but there's just no, we don't see them interact. We don't have any, establishing. You get more emotion and sympathy established when Prince Philip falls off his horse into the stupid water and makes a face at him or whatever he does there.
Yeah.
There's more of a relationship established between Philip and his horse in Sleeping Beauty than Pocahontas and these characters that they're going to make into figures and put into Happy Meals and like, come on, man. You guys have already done Timon and Pumbaa. Like, wow. You
know how to do this.
You've done Sebastian and Flounder and Scuttle. You've done, like, that. You've done Abu.
You aren't just like
and Carpet.
You've learned how, you are the
Raja,
you are the Michelangelos, the Da Vinci's. Like you've painted the Sistine Chapel. Now you give us these stick figures. Like
it's just like
you are the masters of the comic side characters.
In that sense, it is like I think probably has to be one of the most disappointing Disney movies ever because you come to Little Mermaid, and then you hit Beauty and the Beast, and then you hit Aladdin, and then you hit The Lion King. And it's just win. Like, and when you hit The Lion King, it's like, wow, Disney just keeps getting better. They just keep getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very next thing is Pocahontas. It's just like...
It's basically the end of the Renaissance as far as I'm concerned. As far as everybody's concerned, I think.
Yeah, it is the end because it's just like, okay, well...
It's like, what...
You lost it.
It's that kind of lightning in the bottle kind of thing. Like, once you realize you have it, you don't have it anymore. Like, oh, now we're trying to be important. Now we're trying to win an Oscar. And
now we're trying to do things.
Now we're trying to do something important.
Yeah.
Well, and the other piece of trivia, which I think I've said on this podcast in one place or another, is all the best animators worked on Pocahontas. It was in production at the same time as Lion King. And everybody was, murdering their mother to work on Pocahontas because that was the important one. And nobody wanted to work on Lion King. And it's just one of those famous historical kind of oops.
There were some nice little foresty callbacks to moments like, to Beauty and the Beast type animation and things like that. I overstated my case earlier, but
the animation's pretty when she's just like running through the woods
but it's not. While there are pretty things that happen and some pretty animation going on, it really doesn't think of scenes from any of those other films.
Right.
And I mean, just the sense of space and the sense of, I'm in the savannah.
I'm in the environment. This is the Beast's castle.
It's just like, there's just, what do you actually have of that in Pocahontas?
Not much.
So I don't know.
I mean, when you think of the Beast's castle, you think of the ballroom, you think of the West Wing, you think of the table, you have all these
and
lived in places.
All these lived in places, and that's just thinking of the Beast's castle, right? You also have the courtyard and snow. But then you say, okay, what about her poor provincial town? It's like, oh yeah.
And her dad's house.
They're places.
And you think about
baker, I can see all of these places. Think about Agrabah and the Sultan's castle and, the menagerie and the Jafar's lair or the Cave of Wonders or...
When you think about, when I think about Pocahontas, the only image that comes to mind is a babe with some colors kind of streaming off of her.
Exactly. The Little Mermaid, you could argue, has this problem a little bit, but it really doesn't. Like, you still come over the reef and then you've got Triton's castle there and you've got... the place where you're going to perform, and you've got Ariel's little cove, and you've got Ursula's den, and you've got the palace, and
you've got these
little beach area.
Each place has its icon, its figurehead. Ariel, if she's going to sing, is going to be on a specific reef, and it's going to be situated in the middle of the frame, and we're all going to remember that image. Pocahontas doesn't have those kinds of things. There's not that one cliff that she just goes and stands on, or that one. I guess there's Grandmother Willow's little tree alcove or whatever.
Willow's cove down the bend in the river, but
it's all kind of
pretty foresty stuff.
It's not a good movie. It got off to the wrong foot. Like I was with the movie for about 30 seconds, like through the first verse of the song that opens it, and then the second verse immediately killed it for me. Because they just started immediately. I don't remember what the lyrics are. I don't think I wrote them down. But they started immediately just getting didactic. Like, the king doesn't care about us. He just wants gold. I mean, it wasn't much better than that. Like, we're going to destroy the land.
We're going to ravage it and get the gold and kill all the Indians we find.
For the Virginia Company.
Yeah.
It's just like... I won't talk about Ashman again, but man, you miss somebody that knew.
Has there ever been did they ever go out of their way to say Alan Menken, Alan Menken, Alan Menken at the front of any other Disney movie?
I don't think so.
Because they sure did on this one. It was pretty striking.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. I mean, he was worth whatever they paid them, because the only things that actually do hold up about this movie are some of his music. I mean, Colors of the Wind is a pretty song.
Yep.
And it's an iconic song. Like, it's a song that'll probably last, I guess. At least as a touchstone that people make fun of, it'll last. Like, when you want to make fun of that kind of garbage environmentalism stuff, Earth Day, anybody that wants to raise an eyebrow at any of that stuff is going to reference Colors of the Wind. So maybe it'll live on as camp, if nothing else. We shouldn't let them off the hook without giving them a good drubbing for the fact that this villain is such a lame villain.
Forgettable.
Yeah, like the side characters and villains, Disney never messes those up. Maybe the heroine might be insipid, the prince might be insipid, any number of things might be wrong, but you can always rely on Disney for good, funny side characters and a great villain.
Great villains, yep. Yeah, and they blew it.
Yeah, he's
a nothing.
He's greedy. How interesting. I mean, I don't know why? What's boring about him? Why doesn't he work?
I mean, in part, he has no real power or potence, right?
Yeah, he's a comic relief who really never. He's a fop.
He's a fop. He's not a real threat in any way. And any of the real men who are there digging and putting up the pieces of fence, if they just turn on him at any second, like, he's done for. Yeah,
there has to be a believable. Like, we get why everybody sucks up to Gaston.
Yeah.
It's comical and over the top and cartoony as it is. It's supposed to be cartoony. It's a cartoon. But with Ratcliffe, it's like, why these guys are all pretty decent. Thomas seems like a decent guy. The two kind of other guys, Billy Connolly and whatever the other, that they seem cool. Like, why are they listening to this fop?
Yeah, there's nobody that is like Team Radcliffe.
Except for that little gay servant dude.
But he's just a turncoat. Like,
yeah,
he would have been a more interesting villain than Radcliffe, honestly.
Well,
if he were like puppeteering Radcliffe or something like that, that might have been interesting.
I just thought of another idea that would have been interesting. What if we actually played these characters? Like, we have these characters the way they are. What if we actually made what would happen, which is none of these guys take Ratcliffe seriously at all. And then Ratcliffe can get dangerous and psychotic because he's not being taken seriously. Give him something.
Yep. Have him go and actually be the guy that shoots somebody.
Yeah, or
right.
Also,
have him shoot John Smith.
Just make him an evil Native American guy with sorcery powers, because that's what Disney's actually good at. Like,
but they didn't want to do that because politics.
Yeah, but you've got good Indians, so why not have a bad one?
Because if you have bad and good Indians, then you're going to have a white man savior. John Smith's going to have to be, and Pocahontas together are going to have to be mediating between the Indian conflict, and instead you want the white conflict to be the white man. Okay, so it has to be a white man. I'm just trying to think, like, the villain has to be a white guy. Let's say we're in the writer's room and we have all the restrictions that we know we'd have. Yep. What would we do with the villain to make him an actual interesting, cool Disney villain? You know what you do is you make him a slaver. You make him cunning. Maybe he came to Virginia for gold, and as soon as he realizes he's not going to get gold, instead of idiotically being like, let's just kill the Indians, they have the gold, he cunningly sees, actually, we've got an opportunity here. He was actually one step ahead of everybody the whole time instead of one step behind. Exactly. Yeah. So, well, what's the most valuable resource around here? It's all these people that everybody back home is going to be completely willing to dehumanize. So, and all of my men have been trained to dehumanize. And so then let's make the story about the humanization of the Native Americans to these white guys. Yeah. And have John and Pocahontas love story. Since we're doing that and Disneyfying it, then you've got a villain. He may not have a lot of Gaston level vitality. Right. He may not have Jafar level like sorcery, but he's cunning, he's smart, and he's playing to everyone's baser instincts, and everybody came here, do a better job of establishing the fact that all these people came here because they're at the end of their rope and they need to come back with something. They need to establish some kind of, let's just take that opening scene.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, well, the king just wants gold and we're all stupid, let's go around to a couple of the different guys and be like, yeah, my dad's in debtor's prison, and another person be like, yeah, I got locked in the stocks and I lost everything. And, whatever it is, whatever you can.
Instead of sort of telling us, really show us that these guys have to make this work. They have to find
a way to make it work. And they've landed in Virginia. And all of the things that the Spanish and the Portuguese and whoever else, the French, have found in other places, whether it's gold or whatever else it is, sugar, it's not here.
Mm-hmm.
They're trees. So what are we going to do? How do we make this work? We invested our whole lives. We uprooted everything is based on the idea that coming here is going to change our lives and we can make it work. Like, it's going to help us do things for our families back. It's going to whatever. Okay, now you're very vulnerable and susceptible to this guy saying, actually, there is a resource here, and it's slave labor. And then you can play in that space of, and have people with different levels of tension. Some people are just like, yeah, they're not human, whatever, let's do the thing. I've got bills to pay. I got people to get out of debt, whatever it is. You got other people that are like, no, I didn't sign up for that. That's a step too far for me. But I also have these other pressures, plus the peer pressure. Then you've got real tension that you can play with and build.
Right.
All right. So I've run that point into the ground, but that's my answer.
Yeah.
Final answer.
I think.
Do I win $1 million?
I think so. I'll have to check. I'll have to see what the coffers are like for Warhorn Media. I like that idea. I think if they want to be serious, maybe an even better idea to my mind would be to completely Disneyfy things, and Ratcliffe teams up with the shaman from the other tribe who can raise the demon thing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, just give us a monster, for crying out loud.
Well, yeah,
the Wendigo.
Right. Well, they establish Powhatan and his team and whatever the handsome buff guy that she's supposed to marry.
It's so serious.
Yeah.
Because Pocahontas seems like such a joy to be around.
Yeah, exactly. What she really wants to be around is fun people.
Yeah. They just got back from battle with this tribe. They just got back
from a battle with the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
That's you're right. That is the other clear way that they could go. It's like, well, there's a warring tribe.
Right.
There's another tribe out there.
I think we could get away with bad natives as long as we have lots of good, noble natives. And there has to be bad white people. We can't get away without that. But
yeah,
if Ratcliffe could even be manipulating the quote unquote bad natives, and the bad natives could see the error of their ways at the end. But in the meantime, they could create a smoke monster or something like that.
Yeah. As long as you can have him manipulate the Indian without patronizing the Indians.
Yeah, no. Yeah. He just teams up with the witch doctor. The witch doctor raises a monster.
I mean, the witch doctor can cast a spell that manipulates, the chief and whoever else. You can have any number of bad white guys go with Ratcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe. And any number of good guys stay with John and the good tribe. So you have good Indians and good white people. You can have it only be a handful.
Yeah.
You have it be like good Indians and 2 or 3 white people against the bad Indians and 10 or 15 or 20 other white guys.
Well, and as silly as that is, I actually think that they should have done something like that. Or I think they should have just made it a fairy tale. They should have leaned into the magic of it all, because the one thing they're never going to do is actually tell the Pocahontas story, right, which is kind of legend anyway. From my understanding, John Smith legend
made it all legend.
Yeah, John Smith wrote diaries, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, in his diaries there are like 3 different women that want to sacrifice themselves to save him. Like, we don't know what the real story of Pocahontas is. We know she was a girl that maybe did the thing with John Smith and then was, I think, captured and married John Rolfe when she was 14, came to England and died when she was 21 or something like that. Like the clearest...
But was a celebrity for a time.
Yeah, the clearest bit of history we have is her in England.
Converted to Christianity and she was a celebrity. And then John, most people think now basically she was just a tool for John Smith to leverage his own fame.
Right.
With.
But the John Rolfe story where she's captured, she converts, they actually seems like they fell in love. That's a pretty sweet story, actually. Or at least you could make a sweet story out of it. Well, that's not what they did.
Nope.
Boy, I feel like we should give people a little bit more, but I'm not sure what else. Sorry, folks. It's not our fault this episode's going to be short. What do you want us to say all the same stuff, bashing Pocahontas for another half an hour?
I mean, I wish that I could throw some bones to people who have some kind of love or nostalgia for it, but I don't have any bones to throw. The movie didn't give me many bones to throw.
Well, my wife loves musicals. She likes the soundtrack. If people like the soundtrack, I understand that. It's a pretty good soundtrack, I guess. I like most of the songs. Mengen's still a good songwriter. He didn't lose that just because the conception of the movie was dumb. The lyrics obviously aren't as good. And some of them are pretty terrible, actually.
Yeah.
Grandmother Willow, it's creepy. Well, this movie just doesn't land that mix of magic and realism. Like, if we're going to tell a story about racism, then we don't really need a talking tree mitigating
unless the talking tree is going to actually be part of the conflict.
Right.
If the talking tree exists to mitigate things, then that's stupid. If the talking tree ends up being part of the conflict.
Well, I really want to watch The Lion King again. That's what I really want to do. Every time we criticize one of these movies, I end up thinking about the fact that The Lion King actually gets some of those things right. Yeah. Especially with the moral content.
Well, you would be hard pressed to find a thing that The Lion King gets wrong. And that's like part of the genius of The Lion King is it just makes no mistakes. I'm sure that we would, if we went back and watched it, we would find some missteps. Mm-hmm. But man, whatever they are, they're so small and so few.
Well, I think just the fact that its hero actually gets to learn something and grow as opposed to being the one person in his tribe that gets it, that just makes that movie maybe the best. I don't know. I still think Beauty and the Beast is the best. And Beauty and the Beast has some growth for its heroine, maybe a little bit. Growth of sympathy or something like that. Even though she is pretty cool from the get-go. Let's see. Is there anything else to say about Pocahontas?
I don't think so. I can't.
It's just kind of a bummer. The ending's a bummer.
Yeah.
Like, has there ever been a Disney movie that's ended on like an abstract point being made like this without an action climax?
Even the abstract point, it's not really established. It's just like, my people need me. Why?
Because the movie says that. Yeah, it's stupid.
Like, you've not done one. You don't even care about your people. Like, you weren't there when the Warriors came back. You weren't there when you were off in the woods flirting with John Smith this whole time. Like, what do you bring to your people that is so essential? Exactly.
The only case we could make would be you could bring some good PR by going with John Smith. Like, kind of like the real Pocahontas.
Exactly. The real Pocahontas goes to England and softens everybody up to the Native Americans. That's some value that you can bring to your people. That worked. Like, but what value has she shown? Like, what did she? It just doesn't.
Of all the Disney, well, okay, I think Ariel probably still takes the cake for the person that I would least like to hang out with in real life, because Ariel really is just an obnoxious brat. But Pocahontas comes in second. This is not a likable character. She judges everybody. She's not around to help or be part of things or be part of the tribe.
Always going to go off and do her own thing.
She's always going to do her own thing. She's always going to put herself in harm's way, get other people in trouble, get other people killed. And her sense of fun is turning over your canoe and getting you wet and then splashing you, which I don't think is very fun. And her animal friends are dumb. I like the dog. I'll throw the dog a bone. No pun intended.
The dog is the only one that has any real growth.
Yeah, the dog. The dog went on a good journey, a hero's journey.
Can we tell the hero's journey of that dog?
Yeah, can we map Campbell onto the dog here? Yeah, I like the dog. The dog and the raccoon's relationship was cute, I guess. They learned to respect each other, just like the savages on both sides needed to do. I could talk about Pocahontas too.
Savages,
barely even human. Oh man, what a pandering song.
Because they're not like me. Like, that's just like, what the heck?
There's a way to make this lesson land, and this is not it. This is just didacticism, pure and simple, and it's really lame. I mean, if you want to make John Smith more of an unlikable racist at the beginning and really have him be redeemed or have to learn something, maybe that's one way in. But if you can't actually, in one of these kinds of movies, at some point, on some level, say the real racist is you, audience member,
right?
Instead of patting the audience on the head and saying, obviously, you do the right thing, just like Pocahontas, then A, you haven't really fought racism. B, you haven't made a very compelling or interesting story.
Yeah.
Speaking of compelling and interesting, we, for some reason, were too lazy to turn off the Disney Plus autoplay and got to watch Pocahontas 2.
What?
We watched Pocahontas, and then, I don't know, me and my wife were having a conversation or distracted or, I don't know, went to the kitchen or something like that. And Pocahontas...
That's how gripping Pocahontas was.
That's how, yeah. We were so entranced by Pocahontas that we went and did something else.
Pocahontas 2 came on, and you didn't even realize it.
We didn't even realize it. And then we're like, oh, it's Pocahontas 2. And then we were kind of glued to our seats, would be wrong, but we were fascinated enough by what was going on with Pocahontas 2. Because it starts with John Smith. It starts with the return of Ratcliffe. He manages to parlay some favor with the king and get away with it. So he comes after John Smith, and John Smith does this awesome fight scene up on a roof with, it's really bad, like it's that Disney sequel animation that kind of like the Aladdin TV show, or like Return of Jafar for that matter. But what's fun is it really sounded like it was Mel Gibson, and we were like, is that Mel Gibson? That sounds for all the world. Well, we looked it up, and it's like Peter Gibson or something. It's Mel's brother. I forget what his name is, but his voice sounds exactly the same. They literally just cast, and then they brought everybody else back, but they weren't going to pay Mel Gibson bucks. So it starts with Mel Gibson getting thrown off of a tower or something like that. And you're like, oh no, John Smith's dead. Whatever shall I do? And then Pocahontas falls in love with John Rolfe. Actually, John Rolfe shows up and he takes her back to civilization. And then there's this whole asinine plot where she has to impress the king so that Ratcliffe's plan to,
kill all the Native Americans
will be foiled. And at the end of the day, they impress the king, but Ratcliffe's already taken off, so our heroes have to
get in ships and
stop Ratcliffe, and there's a big fight. And Rolfe and Smith team up. Smith, I guess, spoiler alert, Smith didn't actually die. He is in fact the masked stranger that helps Pocahontas.
Smith is a masked stranger. Wow.
Yeah, there's like this hooded guy that's helping her out, and it turns out to be John Smith. And then she has to make a choice between Smith and Rolfe, the two Johns at the end, and
chooses Rolfe.
She chooses Rolfe, and John's like, you can come with me on a world of adventures. I'm never going to settle down. I'm going to go all these different places. And she's like, nah, I got to support the tribe and everything and
have a family
and stuff. So I'll stick with John Rolfe.
Glad John Smith made it easy for her.
John Smith makes it very easy for her. He is no longer interested in...
But it sounds like a more interesting story than Pocahontas.
Yeah, it actually was. It's terribly animated and has a bunch of forgettable songs not by Alan Menken and a really silly plot with Ratcliffe. But I don't know why I'm criticizing this as if I'm saying anything. So get this, Jake. Pocahontas 2 does not hold up as a good work of cinema.
What?
Miko and Flit actually get more laughs in Pocahontas 2, from us at least, than... I mean, they still don't get that many laughs, but they got one or two.
There you go.
Did
they get to go to the new world?
Yeah, of course. The old world, you mean.
Oh, right, the old world.
They get to go to England. And there's a Indian guy played by Raymond's brother. You remember that deep-voiced guy from Everybody Loves Raymond?
Yeah.
Brad Garrett, I think his name was. He plays Pocahontas' bodyguard. So
okay, then.
It's good stuff. If people are trying to remember, like if they saw Pocahontas 20 years ago and they're trying to decide whether to rewatch it with us, I'd say you'd probably have more fun watching Pocahontas 2.
There you go. You heard it here first.
You'd probably also have more fun watching
The Lion King.
The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, or The Lion King 1.5.
Aladdin, King of Thieves.
Aladdin, King of Thieves. Maybe we'll have to do the Aladdin sequels sometime behind a paywall or something like that.
They're the only sequels that we watched.
You as a family watched, or you mean like growing up, or you with your kids now?
No, I've never watched any of the sequels with my kids. Growing up, they're the only sequels that we watched: Return of Jafar and King of Thieves.
I would love to see Guy Ritchie's Return of Jafar. I just like to say that. Just like to put that out. Put that karma, put that chi out in the world.
They have a Disney Plus series, but it's based on Prince Gay Man.
Who's Prince Gay Man?
Like the fop, the prince, the white guy. He's like Dutch or whatever.
Oh, they actually made a real spin-off of the Guy Ritchie movie?
Yes.
With that guy?
It's not out yet. It's in develop. It's I think they had started shooting it maybe even, but yeah, like that character, they decided to make
weird
a whole spinoff about him.
Okay, cool, good for him, I guess. I'll watch an episode or two, see if they do something better with that world than Guy Ritchie did. All right, well, Jake, how many? Zero? That bad, huh?
It is one of those Disney movies that I never have to watch again, and if I never have to watch it again, it will be too soon.
It's a movie that I resent being part of a brand that will never die.
Yes.
This movie will never die, and it will be. And each new generation will be bullied into watching this movie.
I resent that we had to watch it for this podcast. I resent that she's a Disney princess. I resent that she's right there in the middle of the 90s. I resent it. I do not like this movie. Is Mulan next?
I think so. That'll be a nice palate cleanser.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
How do you think this movie compares to Hunchback of Notre Dame as far as Disney's attempts to do something serious and interesting?
Give me Hunchback.
Yeah, I agree.
Everything about Hunchback is way more interesting.
Hunchback, they still don't really marry the comedy and the drama very well, but
it has Frollo, and he's a great villain.
Disney villain. Yeah,
and
Quasimodo's actually a really likable,
he's sympathetic
character.
You can decide to not like the gremlins or whatever, those gargoyles.
Yeah,
that's fine. But Quasimodo's sympathetic. Esmeralda is a thing.
She does her job.
Very much a thing, who does the job that they wanted her to do.
Yeah.
And Frollo's a bad, awesome villain, and he sings Hellfire.
One of the coolest Disney moments of all time, for adults at least.
Yeah, it's this intense.
Nice, scary Disney song.
If you look at just the component parts of that movie, whatever you want to say about how it does or doesn't come together, the opening carnival scene, the fire stuff, and Hellfire.
I say I haven't seen it for years, but the way I remember it, I would say if they had just been able to actually do the serious one
instead of try to make it for kids.
Yeah, just like take those gargoyles out and let's just make Hunchback of Notre Dame, because we've actually got some great elements for it. But whatever, that was never going to happen.
Yep. Got to make that money.
Got to make that money. Could we maybe not call the gargoyles Victor and Hugo? That's
I
guess Victor and Hugo is just so on the nose.
Gauche.
Though. It's gauche, yes. It's a little gauche. It would be like if Timon and Pumbaa were called Elton and John or something like that.
Abbott and Costello.
Abbott and Costello. We'll have to find an excuse to do The Lion King. We'll just have to circle back and do the non-Disney princess Disney movies at some point.
Eventually we will, yeah.
We'll need some kind of theme, though, because I think each time we cast the net, we're not going to want to
do all of them.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We could just be as blatant as to just do the ones that we want to do, maybe.
We could do Disney by decade or something like that.
I mean, probably everything through, I'm going to say somewhere in the 70s, we'd just want to do. I mean, even the losers would be things like 101 Dalmatians, which is pretty good.
It's fine.
You'd have to watch some Aristocats and
Oliver and Company.
We'd be okay with that.
I would be okay with that.
I'd find it interesting. Where I'd start to get bogged down would be like the Black Cauldron and
that's one of the only Disney movies I've never seen.
Yeah, actually, what am I saying? I've never seen it either, and I'd love to see it. maybe we should just do it. But we're not doing that right now.
Hey, guess what?
What's that?
We are on the edge.
Yeah.
Of getting to start our superheroes journey.
Mm-hmm. How close are we, Jake?
We are currently $2 away from unlocking the first stage of the superheroes journey. First stage of the superheroes journey, people will remember, begins with the American anti-hero, typified most perfectly in Indiana Jones.
Dr. Henry Jones Jr.
So we're going to watch all the Indiana Jones movies once we get an additional $2 a month of support. So somebody out there, 2 of you out there, can go pledge $1 a month and unlock that first stage of the superheroes journey for us. And we will start to build a picture of the development of the hero and the superhero and the modern American mythos.
Well, and if you enjoyed, which I know many people did, the scene-by-scene breakdowns that we did of the Star Wars movies, I think Indiana Jones will yield even more riches because we're going to be discussing the work of a master scene builder and filmmaker in Steven Spielberg, and those individual sequences, all the different action scenes and special effects scenes and character scenes and everything. It's just going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Indiana Jones is going to have a lot of fruit on that vine.
Yep.
So I'm really excited.
Just so people know where this is all headed. Once we unlock Indiana Jones, the next goal after that will be part 2. The comics hit the big screen, and that will be a deep dive into 2 very different superhero franchises where people are just beginning to figure out what does it mean for a comic book character to hit the screen. So we'll deal with the Christopher Reeve Superman films and the Tim Burton Batman films, which I think we both have some nostalgia for both of those franchises. Absolutely. But they're also a mess and have the really campy, stupid aspects, but they're really fun. There's a lot to talk about there and what's going on and how
it was before we
think of heroes
canonized the way that we do superhero movies. Like there wasn't a Marvel formula. It was just people trying to bring comics to life, and so it's interesting to see it in that stage.
Yeah, well, the next step on that journey to the Marvel formula is Sam Raimi and Christopher Nolan.
That's right.
And so that's the stage after that.
Stage 3.
Yeah, stage 3, Sam Raimi unlocks Spider-Man. Christopher Nolan unlocks Batman. And what we have is, with Batman, the turn towards that gritty realism, and with Spider-Man and Sam Raimi, that just sort of real step towards the Marvel formula.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably the greatest Spider-Man film yet.
You can certainly make that argument, and there's a lot of points.
Put it in my top. I'm going to say that there's no way that Spider-Man 2.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Spider-Man 3. Isn't that the greatest Spider-Man movie?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah.
Jake often puts on a tinfoil hat and rants about how Spider-Man 3 is the best movie ever made.
Yeah. No, Spider-Man 2,
of course,
is unquestionably in the top 3 Spider-Man movies of all time.
And questionably in the really top three superhero movies of all time. It's a great movie.
Yeah. You can certainly argue it as being the greatest superhero movie of all time.
Well, I think what you have with those Spider-Man movies for the first time is somebody that likes and gets comic books doing a movie.
Gets what people like about comic books.
It ain't Tim Burton trying to do his Tim Burton thing or Richard Donner doing his thing. It's somebody that just loves Spider-Man, and that
Spider-Man is cool.
Paves the way for a lot of what happened.
Hey, if we think Spider-Man's cool and just act like Spider-Man's cool, there's actually a whole world of people out there that also think Spider-Man is cool, and we don't have to put our tongue in our cheek.
Mm-hmm.
We can play Spider-Man sincerely. Also have it just be as fantastic as some of the comic book stuff and wild and out there, because that stuff's fun too. We don't have to come up with microwave explanations for things like Christopher Nolan thought he had to do. But, Nolan pushed the conversation forward too in his own way.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about, we're having trouble not talking about it. So you better just pony up the cash.
Yeah,
folks.
Get us there. And then after that, we start to get into the MCU by phase.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be fun and something I'm really looking forward to. So if you thought it was fun, when we went through Star Wars scene by scene, which are far and away our most popular episodes that we've ever done.
Yeah.
Guys, you want us to get and do that with Indiana Jones, with the Richard Donner and Tim Burton stuff. You really want us to do it with Raimi and Nolan, whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And man, the MCU will just be tons of fun to do that with.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And by the way, that's not all you get when you go to Patreon. You get access to behind the paywall Patreon episodes of this very show. There's one that I think came out yesterday when this drops, where we talk about the Disney live action remakes, about Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and Cinderella, and me and Jake and Ben Solzer was there for that one.
Yep.
Me and Jake have also been going through every week, watching a little bit more of
Star Wars Clone Wars.
Star Wars Clone Wars, arguably the best Star Wars thing ever. He said without irony. It's
100% the best Star Wars thing ever. I plant my flag here, and I defy anyone to prove me wrong.
And I'm in season 1, aka the dumb season where they were figuring things out, and it still might be the best Star Wars thing ever. I really like the least of what that show has to offer, honestly. So sign up to hear all our thoughts on that. And obviously we're much more excited to talk about those things than we were to talk about Pocahontas, but that's not our fault.
Nope. They should have made a better Pocahontas film.
They should have made a better Pocahontas. Hey, I've been there. We've done podcasts where it's like, we don't actually have something profound to say, but we want to say something profound. You know, like you'll as a creative doing any kind of work, you'll start the process. Like you'll get yourself into trouble where you're like, I want to win the Academy Award instead of I actually have something to say. And so I relate to the problem, but a good thing that thankfully I think we've been able to do in those situations is realize, hey, wait a second, we don't have anything to say. So let's do something else. And that's what Pocahontas should have done. Should have canceled it. That's what a great producer would have done. And that's, by the way, you hear that story about all the Disney movies. Like we were going to do a stupid, serious version of, we said this with one of them, Little Mermaid maybe, or Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, we were going to do Beauty and the Beast without songs, without anything. And then we realized, let's scrap that.
And do awesome songs
do the good
instead.
One. Disney has a history of having evil producers scrap things that had already had millions of dollars and tons of time poured into them and say, let's start from scratch because we have a quality guarantee. We get things right. We take the time. We invest the money. We have the time. We have the money.
Nothing's more valuable than our name.
Yeah. When people trust that it doesn't matter what the story's about. It doesn't matter. They just know it's a Disney movie and they go see it. And that's a valuable thing to maintain. And that's what Pixar has done.
They go see it, they laugh, they cry, their hearts are warmed. They get that Disney magic feeling, period.
That's why you scrap this Pocahontas and you build it up from scratch. And that's what Pixar does too. That's what Pixar, when you read between the lines, Pixar sounds like a great place to work. It looks so much fun. They're all sitting on the little bouncy balls and everything.
It's like working at Apple.
Yeah.
In the Steve Jobs era.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you spent 5 years of your life on this? Well, it's pretty good instead of great. So you're fired.
Yep.
Somebody else is taking over. Thanks for trying. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. Sure, DreamWorks would love to have it. But we're not DreamWorks. We're Pixar. We don't do that stuff.
Yeah. Well, Disney, you dropped the ball. But I don't have a but. You just dropped the ball. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Patreon.com/Sanity at the movies. Until next time.
Hakuna Matata. Actual good movies just around the river bend.